And we continue at 1:05 in the afternoon on the John Phillips Show. Mr. Randy Wings in Culver City.
John, here we are, one day before the end of election season in California. Prop 50 is on the ballot, and as of right now, the state is looking at a 27% turnout rate. If you break it down by party lines, 31% of Democrats have sent back in their ballots, 29% of Republicans have sent back in their ballots, and the NPPs never disappoint, 19%.
800-222-5222 is the telephone number, 1-800-222-5222. It is our pleasure to welcome our next guest to the program. He is a member of the California State Assembly representing Los Angeles County, including cities like West Hollywood in the California legislature. Assemblyman Rick Chavez Zbur, welcome.
Hello, how are you today?
Good. Thanks so much for stopping by. We appreciate your time.
Of course.
Let's start out with the breaking news that NBC News is reporting that should Proposition 50 pass, Nancy Pelosi, the former Speaker of the House, will likely announce that she is not running for re-election, that she will consider her job in the United States Congress done. It's not very often that a network comes out with a story making a definitive claim like they did in this one, unless they know something that we don't. What do you make of that report, and do you think it's true?
You know, I have no inside information about that. I have great respect for the former Speaker Pelosi, and all I know is that she is working her heart out to make sure that we're protecting democracy. And of course, she, as am I, am focused on making sure that we pass Prop 50 because that is the way that we protect American democracy and that we push back on attempts to steal our elections coming up in the next election cycle.
Okay, so as you mentioned, you are a supporter of Prop 50. We still have a day and a half of voting left. Go ahead and make your pitch to the voters for in favor of Prop 50.
Well, Prop 50 is about protecting California's democracy from the very real threat posed by Donald Trump and MAGA Republicans in states like Texas, Indiana, and Missouri, who are actively trying to rig the election by rewriting the rules to hold on to power in Congress. Across the country, they've lost attacks on voting rights. They've gerrymandered districts and attempted to undermine fair elections. And now they're trying to manipulate the 2026 midterms to seize control of Congress, even if voters reject their agenda. Prop 50 gives voters the opportunity to make sure that California stands as the firewall for democracy, protecting the will of the people, not the whims of extremists. This is about one thing. It's about keeping our government accountable to voters, not politicians.
All right. So let's look at Prop 50 from the point of view of, in politics, you can be partisan in nature, it can be a partisan issue in nature, or it can be not particularly partisan. So let's look at, for example, the city of Clovis, which is a sizable city by national standards, not a terribly large city by California standards because we're so much bigger than everyone else. In previous drawing of the lines, Clovis has been put in one district, and they have one representative. Should Prop 50 pass, Clovis would be cut into three different districts. So the power that they would have would be diluted. So if they need something like, a bridge or some infrastructure project for their city that they're in desperate need of, the power that they have to go to their member to say, hey, we need a bridge and we need you to come through on this is diluted. And their ability to do something like that is greatly diminished. You look at other parts of the state, there's a district that goes along the North Coast where the population center is in Marin County, but it goes all the way out to rural California, out in the middle of nowhere. If you're a veteran in that area and you have a problem with the VA, it's not easy to find someone in your community who can help you with the problem. I mean, it might be a 4 or 5 hour drive to get to your office so you can meet with someone where you can talk about whatever issue it is. What do you say to people in Clovis? What do you say to people in Northern California who now no longer have someone in their community to handle their problem?
So first of all, the maps that are going to be that the voters are voting on in the election that's coming up on Tuesday, they are maps that actually represent drawing fair maps for California's diverse communities. And while you can always find some areas in any set of maps in which some communities are divided, overall, the maps that are before the voters have more keep communities together more than the prior maps did. They keep communities of interest together more. We divide cities and counties less than the prior maps did. So overall, the maps are fair maps, and they followed the principles of the Independent Redistricting Commission, and overall, I think, are fairer than the maps that they're going to be replacing. I think the other thing that I would say is, Prop 50 does reaffirm California's commitment to independent redistricting. It's a temporary common sense safeguard that maintains the independent redistricting process while protecting against this national power play that's designed to tilt the balance to Republicans in Washington.
You're in the state legislature where members tend to be younger than the members in the congressional delegation because you have things like term limits that create constant churn and turnover. But you look at our congressional delegation, and many of these members are in their 60s, their 70s. Some of them are in their 80s. And they've been around a long time, and they've represented many of the same communities for a long time. They know their cities, they know their voters, they know their issues. If you take someone who has an urban district in Sacramento or the Bay Area or whatever, and now you dump a lot of new people into that district from a different area, a rural area where the issues are totally different, it's going to be very hard to teach an old dog new tricks where they have their committee assignments, they have their areas of expertise, and then all of a sudden it's like, okay, you need to learn about agriculture, or you need to learn about water, or you need to make relationships with Indian tribes that are nowhere near your current district. It's going to be very difficult to get someone in their 80s to do that when they're used to doing things a certain way, and they've been relatively successful as they've been, elected and reelected and over and over again. I just don't see them learning those issues. I see people in those remote parts of the district being just totally ignored.
I think we all have to represent our districts. The one thing I'll say is that the maps that are before the voters are fair maps that keep communities together more than the prior maps did. And frankly, we don't draw maps in order to benefit the politicians. We draw maps to make sure that communities are represented fairly in our elected bodies, and these maps do that. We go through redistricting every 10 years, and district lines change, and that means that sometimes a new a member that is an incumbent needs to understand different parts of their communities, and that's part of what always happens. What this, though, is about protecting our democracy from the threat that Donald Trump has posed by rigging the elections in other states. That's what this is about. If we don't protect our democracy here in California, we are tying our hands behind our back, and we're going to let Donald Trump walk away with maintaining control of Congress, even when the American public does not agree with his policies.
Sometimes in politics, I've found when you think something's going to play a certain way, you don't think it all the way through, and it ends up being something other than what you assumed it would be. Like term limits, I would categorize as that. It sounded like a good idea at the time. I think term limits have been relatively bad for the state, and we're seeing that certainly with fire policy and water policy. Certain things, it takes a long time to learn those issues, and if you constantly are kicking people out to make room for new people, then you don't have that kind of expertise like we used to have. If you're just looking at this from the point of view of a partisan Democrat trying to counteract what Texas is doing to make sure that Texas doesn't generate more seats for Republicans that would benefit the Republican Party, and the Democrats need to do the same thing in California to cancel that out. You look at what's going on in the next census, and by all estimates that I've heard, maybe you've heard different numbers, I don't know, California stands to lose between 3 and 5 seats in the next census just due to population changes, although I've talked to people recently who say it's probably closer to 4 or 5 seats. Texas is going to gain seats because more people are moving to Texas than are moving to California. And so when they redraw their lines, when they have to do it again, they're going to be drawing in lines for more people. In California, whatever seats the Democrats gain out of Prop 50, aren't we looking to lose those during the next census when we redraw the lines based on the new population? And even with the 5 seats that Democrats could win in California, I'd say 3 of them are probably Democratic seats that are safe. But Darrell Issa could win, Kevin Kiley could win, so we're really looking at between 3 and 5 seats that the Democrats could gain. Do you think it's worth it if then you have to give those back the next time we redraw the lines?
This is about a power grab that is intended to affect and steal the right of the voters to make their voices heard in the 2026 election. If we allow Donald Trump, because he goes to governors in Republican states to basically say, draw me new lines that guarantee me more seats, we can't stand by and allow that to happen. This is a response to a grab and election rigging in other states. And so protecting our democracy is something that is important and that we need to do everything we can to make sure that voters continue to have the ability to determine who is in Congress, not extremist politicians who are trying to rig elections.
Do you think that had California not moved forward with Prop 50, it wouldn't have created an arms race where other states like Kansas and Utah and Florida and Ohio, they say they're following suit and responding to California. And they're saying because of Prop 50, we're going to redraw our lines too. As opposed to, I guess, New York redrew their lines. Democrats gained 3 seats out of that. Texas is redrawing their lines. Republicans are going to gain 5 seats out of that. If you just leave it there, it's a net Republican gain of 2. But if you have an arms race and a whole bunch of different states gets involved, just depending on how many states redraw their lines, you could be looking at everything from a wash to a Republican gain of double-digit seats.
This election rigging was started by Donald Trump and his request to Republican governors to give him more seats. When we started this effort, we basically told the folks in Texas and in these other Republican states that California would stand back and that our redistricting effort would hold if they did not proceed to try to rig these elections, and they decided to do that anyway. I don't think it makes a difference, frankly. It would have made a difference if we had sort of held back here in California. All it would have done is it would have handed the 2026 election to the Republicans, even when the American public does not support Donald Trump's failed policies.
When you look at the California the Democratic delegation, there are differences in ideology. Obviously, if you represent a more liberal district, you're going to have a more liberal voting record. If you represent a more moderate district, you're going to have a more moderate voting record. But by and large, for important votes, that block votes together. And that certainly benefited. We spent time at the beginning talking about Nancy Pelosi, who was Speaker. It benefited Nancy Pelosi, not just when she ran for Speaker, but when she was running for various leadership positions before. Having that block of California votes behind her certainly benefited her. When we redraw these lines, should Prop 50 pass, and then we lose between 3 and 5 seats, and you look at the population shifts within the state that have happened since COVID, where we've certainly seen areas like Los Angeles County lose population, the Bay Area lost population. We've seen population increases in places like the Central Valley, Orange County, the Inland Empire. When we redraw these lines with fewer seats, between 3 and 5 fewer seats, and population shifts within the state, there's going to be a lot of member-on-member matchups where longtime members of Congress are going to be dumped in the same district as many people I'm sure that they would regard as their friends, certainly ideological allies, certainly people they have worked with in the past. What kind of cohesion do you think that's going to cause within that caucus where your friend today could very soon be your foe tomorrow when they redraw these lines with 3 to 5 fewer seats?
Look, after the next census, Prop 50 reaffirms California's commitment to independent redistricting and calls on all states to commit to fair and impartial maps. So after the next census, we will return to our independent redistricting. That effort is about drawing districts that represent the people. It's not about protecting incumbents. So what's happening with Prop 50 will have no impact on what happens when lines are drawn again after the next census. The next census, under the redistricting proposal, it will look at keeping communities together, making sure that communities of interest are represented, that we're complying with the Voting Rights Act, and that will continue to occur. And these issues of whether or not a member is running against another member, that is something we shouldn't be looking at. We should be drawing districts to represent the people. We shouldn't be drawing districts to favor particular politicians. And in fact, the maps that are before the voters did that. The maps before the voters followed the principles of the Redistricting Commission, with the one exception, which is that they were drawn to make sure that we were fighting back on the election rigging in other states.
Arnold Schwarzenegger, who's the father of the Independent Commission, said he thinks if Prop 50 were to pass, there's no way that the Independent Commission comes back because, let's face it, the same dynamic will exist in a few years when we redraw the lines that exist today, which is that we have no control over what other states do. So there will be states that have partisan gerrymanders. There will be states that try to play it straight. What other states do, you don't have control over. I don't have control over. It's up to them in those states. So given the fact that we know that there will be, or there's likely to be, partisan gerrymanders in other states, do you really think that regardless of what happens elsewhere, we're going to go back to that commission?
Prop 50 requires us that we go back to the commission. So we would actually have to take steps to undo the independent redistricting commission cycle. So, with all due respect to Governor Schwarzenegger, who I respect, he's just wrong. The independent redistricting commission is preserved by Prop 50 and will continue after the next census.
We have a day and a half left of voting. If people want to get their ballots turned in tomorrow, they can turn them into a polling station. They can put it in the mail as long as it's postmarked by tomorrow. We'll count the vote here in California. We have about 30 seconds left if you want to make one more pitch for Prop 50.
Again, Prop 50 is really about pushing back on this election rigging that's happening in other states, and it gives Californians a voice to push back on what we're seeing here in California. Troops coming into our communities, healthcare funding being ripped away from families, food stamps, health benefits being denied. This is an ability for Californians to indicate that they do not support the policies of Donald Trump and that we are not going to stand for him trying to rig the elections and deprive voters across the country of the ability to choose who represents them in Congress. So this is about responding to election rigging that Donald Trump called for and is occurring in other. We can't just sort of stand with our hands behind our back as states all over the country try to gerrymander districts to deprive voters of their true choices in Congress.
Assemblyman Rick Chavez Zbur, representing the 51st District, which is Los Angeles County in the California State Legislature. Thanks so much for stopping by.
Thank you so much. Take care.
If you'd like to email the show, you could do so at johnnydon'tlikeshow@gmail.com. That's johnnydon'tlikeshow@gmail.com. And Randy, now that we've crossed the halfway point of today's show, if you want to continue listening to us after we sign off at 3, that's easy to do.
3 hours a day of this, is it enough for you? Come on. Go watch Love is Blind. Search for The John Phillips Show wherever you get your podcasts, whether it's the Apple Podcast app, iHeart, Spotify. Search for The John Phillips Show. Hit subscribe. You can download all the episodes. You can do a Google on the YouTube. You can get the free KABC app. You can get the free KSFO app. You can get the KMJ Now app. Listen to us Saturdays at 2 in the Central Valley. So many different ways to listen live to our radio stations and download all the podcasts. And if you listen to all 3 hours a day of this, you listen to my 1 hour show on KABC, you downloaded all the podcasts, and you still need something to listen to, I can't help you.
Oh, shucks.
Let's go to the phones and welcome Suzanne in Mission Viejo. Suzanne, hello.
Hello, John.
Hello.
Okay, I forced myself to listen to that whole segment with Mr. Chavez, Aaron Burr, and I just want to know when he's going out on tour with David Byrne, because he's another talking head.
So he didn't win you over.
Oh, hell no to the no, no, no. I'm already way no on Prop 50, but I pulled over in a Target parking lot to look up in sort of the most non-biased way I could on Google to see, just reading up really quick. I knew the redistricting, particularly as it pertains to Huntington Beach, a, very red stronghold of Orange County. And I had heard about the congressman from Long Beach would then be the leader of over Huntington Beach as well with the redistricting. And just Huntington Beach and Long Beach are completely, opposite sides of the color spectrum, red and blue, and that just, to me, overall would hurt our opportunity to, keep Republican seats. And that guy, Congressman Robert Garcia, has been quoted saying, I want to have every school board seat, every, chamber or whatever, like top to bottom, Democrat, Democrat, Democrat. And that is a warning sign. Even though the guy, Rick Chavez, was going back every break that you were turning a question to him, he went back to power grab, Donald Trump, power grab, blah, 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 talking head, same as it ever was, same as it ever was, same as it ever was.
Well, I'm looking right now. You mentioned the congressman from Long Beach will now be representing Huntington Beach and any number of cities in Orange County. I've lived in Orange County. I'm from Orange County originally. It's like two different worlds going from Orange County to Long Beach. And typically, Orange County had their own members because they had their own needs. And Long Beach is the size of Atlanta. We don't think of Long Beach as being a big city because it's in the shadow of Los Angeles. But Long Beach is the size of Atlanta. And when you dump Huntington Beach, which is in a totally different county, in with Long Beach, which is in Los Angeles County, what you're doing is you are making a Long Beach district where you have all of these other communities that are just dumped in there, and no one's going to pay attention to them. I'm looking at a list of cities that came out that adopted resolutions against Prop 50. They include Huntington Beach, Orange, Westminster, Seal Beach, Newport Beach, Mission Viejo, Yorba Linda. So these cities in Orange County know what's coming, and that is their districts are going to be LA districts, and they're going to be totally ignored. Thank you for the call. I appreciate it. Let's go back to the phones and welcome Joe in Santa Monica. Joe, hello.
Mr. Wisdom, thank you so much. I think that this proposition, there have probably been some worse propositions, but I can't think of one worse than this. We're supposed to be represented by our congressmen. And what you're saying is we're not going to be represented at all. The 40% of the people here that are Republicans are just going to be left to fodder. And it's really disgusting. And as I recall, John, correct me if I'm wrong, I think I heard from you, New York did this first. Is that correct?
Yeah, New York drew their lines redrew their lines after the census. They were the first state to do that. And they made the same argument that Texas did, which is a judge told them to do it. And the Democrats ended up netting 3 seats from the new lines. So then Texas said, okay, well, a judge told us to redraw the lines, and the Republicans are going to net 5. So that would have been a total net of 2 for the Republicans between New York and Texas.
As conservative as I am and as Republican as I am, if the shoe was on the other foot, I would never vote for this proposition if it was to our favor. It's disgusting. It's not American, and it's completely against representative government. And John and Randy, I appreciate you guys. Thank you.
Well, thank you for the call. Let's go to Davey in the Bay Area. Davey, hello.
Hello.
Hi there.
Hey, John. Hey, I too am a first-time caller, but long-time listener, especially in your morning show from, 2 to 5 in the morning. So I was telling your screener was I don't ever hear about the 13 counties that flipped for Trump in California is one. And if the constituents of all those 13 counties went red instead of blue or purple, the red, I'm sure they're going to have a hard time taking this pill, voting yes on a ridiculous proposition. And I can tell you from a lot of family members that I have, a big-time rancher farmer from Susanville all the way down to Plumas County, they're angry and they're all no votes up there, but they, and there's all the other counties that already vote Republican or pretty much Republican. They are not gonna. There's no way you can swing those voters over.
No, and now they're going to have no representation in Washington, D.C. Their representative is not going to come from their community. It's going to come from a population center that's nowhere near them. So if there's an issue that they have to deal with the EPA or a water issue or whatever, instead of having someone from their area who understands those issues, they're going to have to go to someone in a completely different part of the state who's going to look at them like they're an annoyance.
Yeah, and in fact, like the Susanville group and that whole area, Bernie and Redding, California, you mean all their prayers been answered by Marin County or Sonoma or Napa County Democrat? It's just ridiculous.
All right, thanks for the call, sir. Let's go to, is it Malia in Lancaster?
Yes.
Malia, are you there?
Hello. I voted no on Proposition 50, and I'm no longer a Democrat. I tell everyone to vote independent, and yes, I did vote for President Trump, and also I vote for ICE, and I also wanted to be in that class action suit where they sue Gavin Newsom for that stupid Proposition 50 for $300 million of wasted taxpayer money.
All right. Thank you for the call. Let's go to Ken in Studio City. Ken, hello.
Hi, John. Good interview. You asked about a dozen questions, each one different. I understand why you didn't give Representative Burr, any pushback at all. You had to get through all of your questions in a limited amount of time. This is the only interview that I'm okay with no pushback. So you asked a dozen different questions. He had 3 canned answers to every single one of them, which were Orange Man bad, the independent, this preserves the independent districting commission, and this is fair. This is actually fair. Don't let your lying eyes deceive you. So the absolute nerve of the Democrat politicians, both in the state and nationally, the extent of their lies, their unbelievably obvious lies, is quite unbelievable. What's more unbelievable is how many liberals just take their lies as truth. And lastly, the only thing that I don't understand that you did in the interview is why at the beginning and at the end you gave that guy a chance to make his pitch. I just don't understand it. It's just horrible. So,
well, here's why. I am of the belief.
I just don't understand it.
I am of the belief that when you have an argument that you can defend, I can defend my vote on Prop 50. I can make an argument that I can defend with people asking me questions about it. I feel very confident in that. The argument for the yes side is exactly as you described. It is Orange Man bad. And that is the number one, number two, number three most important issue to them. And the fact of the matter is we are breaking up communities of interest. If your town needs a bridge and you're split into 3 different districts, you're not going to get that bridge. It's just not going to happen because you don't pack the punch that you otherwise would if your entire city was in one district and you had a member who was reliant on your votes to be sent back to Washington, D.C. It's just a fact. And if you're represented by someone who doesn't understand your issues and doesn't understand your area, you're going to get very poor representation. That is also a fact. And from the point of view of just if you're a partisan Democrat who wants the Democrats to do well, you're going to spend $1 gazillion in favor of this thing, and then you're going to have to turn around and give those seats back because people don't want to live here anymore. Well, have you ever asked yourself the question, why don't people want to live here anymore? We have the best weather on planet Earth. We have the best restaurants on planet Earth. We have the winning sports teams. We have everything that you could have possibly imagine, and people are still moving out. And the reason that people are moving out is not the weather. People are not moving out because they rather watch their favorite sports teams from afar. They're moving out because the state is poorly run. And what they're asking for is they're asking for even worse representation. Worse representation in Congress. But Orange Man bad is their top priority. And when you listen to him explain it, I think that you walked away with that impression. I walked away with that impression. And that's not a very good explanation as to why you should vote for this thing unless you have Trump derangement syndrome.
Was your hope that he would see the light in your argument?
No. I mean, I was asking questions, and he was only interested in giving the answers that you just described. And I think if you sat down and you listened to that interview, you saw what the motivation is for the supporters of Prop 50. Their motivations are Orange Man bad, and that's it. And it really doesn't go beyond that. All right. Thank you for the call, sir. Let's go to Tom in Rancho Santa Margarita. Tom, hello.
Hey, good afternoon, John. Thank you for having me.
Thanks for calling.
Hey, thank you. Got to get used to the pause there. Hey, couple of things. First off, Mr. Chavez, I did not appreciate or value what he was saying. For me, multiple things going on there, and that is that I saw him as one, again, as you had been talking earlier about someone who keeps on bringing the focus back to we hate Trump, okay, and you need to jump on board because you should hate Trump with us. And it's a party of one that has become their mantra, has become the message of the party, which is very unattractive. And that's why I think if you look at over a month ago or a month and a half ago, the New York Times, the left-leaning New York Times, posted an article about how they're dealing with a voter registration crisis. And the Democrat Party is. That's a wake-up call, okay? Secondly was the fact that you brought it up, and again, it was more about we hate Trump, okay? And that is he couldn't handle scoreboard. All the Republican states that are gaining voters right now, the Texas, the Floridas, the North Carolinas, the Tennessees, etc., versus those that are in the top 5 losing states that are the New Jerseys, the New Yorks, the Illinois, the Hawaiis, etc. He couldn't handle scoreboard. And I see, honestly, that they're kind of getting a little desperate if this is their only message.
Well, the fundamental question that I had, and I asked it any number of different ways, is what does this do for California? What does this do to better our representation for the people who live in California? And the answer was, that's not relevant. What's relevant is combating Donald Trump. And if that is your message, and that is point 1, point 2, point 3, you'll get all the people who hate Donald Trump on board. And in California, that's a majority because this is a blue state. This is a one-party state. But your point is right. It may not necessarily be that way forever. You know, at one point in time, California was a ruby red state. This was the state that produced Dick Nixon and it produced Ronald Reagan. It changed over time, but just because it's a Democrat state now doesn't mean it's going to be a Democrat state 20 years from now. And if you don't have an answer to the question, what are you going to do to give California better representation? If that's treated as if it's not relevant, at some point you're going to start losing people because you need to have a message in terms of what you can provide for people and how it's better than the other side, as opposed to we're playing a game of tit for tat. We don't like what Texas did. And to combat Donald Trump, we have to pass Prop 50 in California because that's the argument.
Yeah, and one thing kind of to add to that is California sometimes has surprised me. I look back over the 3 times that the state has tried to get rid of or modify Prop 13, voted down. Okay, I also look at affirmative action in colleges, things like that. That there was also voted down in terms of how we're going to allow or how we're going to show any bias towards college admissions. Voted down. So sometimes California has surprised me and has actually kind of said, no, I kind of border on the moderate conservative side.
That is 100% true. And we saw that with Prop 1A, which almost failed. That was Gavin Newsom's initiative for the homeless. Thanks for the call. I appreciate it. Let's go to Ann in L.A. Ann, hello.
Hello, John. I think your interview was excellent. And by not interrupting him, by not arguing with him, you allowed him to prove to all of us the fool and the liar that he is. And what has happened to the Democratic Party, they are no longer liberal. They have been hijacked by what I call the oppressive progressives. They don't care about us, whether we're Democrats, whether we're independent. The bottom line is we voted for the independent redistricting, and this, yes, on 50, eliminates it and allows the politicians that are telling us, oh, we have to save democracy by voting yes against, yes for 50, and yes is against Trump. Well, Trump is not the issue here anymore. The bottom line is he won the election. We may not like his communication skills. However, he's putting back law and order into the land, and I think that's what we're for.
All right. Thank you for the call. I appreciate it.